All right, people, we're back. It's another Sunday morning, another episode of Talkin' Lost. We are here to talk about season 1, episode 3, as we talked about both parts of the pilot last week. Tabula Rasa. This is our first focus episode on Kate, and this is the episode that really, I would say, establishes the trajectory of the show going forward, as far as the whole A storyline on the island and then B storyline in flashbacks in order to kind of reinforce what we're seeing on the island. Luke, initial thoughts on this episode before we get started?
Well, now that you mentioned that, that's going to be the structure. It's very Arrow-esque, so I'm guessing Arrow kind of borrowed it from this.
Yeah, I was about to say, one might say that Arrow was one of many shows that copied Lost's format over the years since it went off the air. All of that and more on today's episode of Talkin' Lost. All right, Luke, season 1, episode 3, Tabula Rasa. This episode aired the final week of September of 2004, I believe, if my dating skills are accurate. A couple of reviews that came out when this episode first aired. Even though nowhere near the brilliance of the pilot, a very good episode all the same. When Lost was in its prime, it was must-watch television. Remember first watching it, found it remarkably easy to get into, was hooked from the start, and was on season 3 by the end of 1 week. The general consensus is that the final season is a disappointment and cannot disagree. It would have been a Herculean task to follow on from the brilliant pilot, still one of Lost's best episodes, one of the best pilots ever produced for television. Tabula Rasa is a worthy follow-up, but somewhat of a letdown. It's very important in establishing Kate's backstory and how she came to be in the situation she is now. But when it comes to Lost in general, while Kate's story is still intriguing, things are even more fascinating. They're even more interesting and important stories. In correlation to this episode, the whole stuff with Sawyer fascinated more. So I can say right off the bat that there's a general dislike for Kate as a character. While this to me wasn't nearly as egregious as some of the hatred towards other female characters in TV at the time, it was definitely noteworthy, especially considering the fact that, you know, if you remember from what we talked about last week at the pilot, Kate was originally conceived as supposed to be the lead character, you know, the passing of the torch from Jack to Kate before the general rewrites. And what I'll say about this episode is, to me, this is yet another episode in season 1, which, if you ask me, is the best season of the show, that is crucial in terms of continuing to set up and establishing characters, not just for Kate, who is the focus character of this episode, but also for the other supporting characters you get around it. You know, you get little brief moments of Locke, of Jenna's son, of Michael and Walt. And also, this is another big episode in terms of continuing Sawyer's character and kind of, you know, establishing him as the foil of the group, if you will. You know, you kind of have like the group hierarchy essentially being set up, you know, where you've got
the archetypes and
exactly
whatnot, and filling the various roles.
Exactly. You've got kind of everybody, you know, starting to fill in their roles. You know, Jack as the hero, Sawyer as the villain, Saeed is like the smart, capable leader, Hurley as kind of, you know, the helpful, joyful sidekick. You know, we're getting to know these guys more, and the show is continuing to do its homework, lay the groundwork as far as really establishing these characters and who they are. It's why, again, I really appreciate season 1. Looking back on it, it probably is my favorite season overall. I just remember when I first watched it the first time, just like being so interested in all those little moments that we spent with each of the characters, whether they were saying something or not. You know, just like it wasn't necessarily important to the plot, but it didn't matter because the characters, once again, were so interesting, and I wanted to know more about them. And as this episode establishes, now that we have the structure, we were going to kind of get this flashback-esque backstory for each of these characters going forward. And that was what really interested me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing there's going to be several episodes of different characters, just backstories. We're going to find out more about them, something like that.
Well, the good thing, too, is that obviously, even though we don't spend a lot of time with them in this episode, obviously Mr. John Locke, who we were talking about last season a little bit, or last episode rather, what's it called? We were already talking about kind of how mysterious and interesting of a character he was. While we don't spend a lot of time with him in this episode, we definitely, I'll say that next episode, Walkabout, is a Locke origin story character. And while Locke, the thing that I forget is that as crucial and important as a character as Locke becomes over the course of the show, I keep forgetting how like much of a mysterious character he was, just looking in on the fringe, you know, helping to establish some of the show's more mystical elements as they got on. Right now, we're still very much in the practical, the survival, how we're going to send a signal out, how we're going to survive. But as the show continues on and it moves more into the mystical and more of the metaphysical, if you will, that's when Locke really takes center stage, I would say.
What I like about this episode reminds me of like just like I mostly watch shows that come out now. It's such a contrast to like 8 episodes versus what 2024
Right,
and something
exactly.
like that. So like not much happens in this episode, just like moving the plot and the mystery forward, but it's not bad. It's like if you're
Yes,
binging the show, it's just more show for you to
exactly,
see. It's like
exactly.
like why not?
I couldn't agree with you
Now it's
more.
like every okay 6 episodes,
Yep,
and
over, done, boom, on to
rush
the
the
next thing.
finale.
On to the next thing.
And yeah,
Exactly.
it's just nice to be able to breathe
Yes.
in a show.
I couldn't
So,
agree with you more because Luke, this is what TV used to be. Yes, not all of it worked. Yes, we were inundated with a lot of filler, but guess what? It made the good stuff that we got even great. And honestly, even though I know TV will never go back to this, I really do miss kind of this certain nostalgia point in TV's career. So, with that being said, let's get into what actually happens in this episode. Like I said, this episode is called Tabula Rasa. I don't remember what the meaning of that is. I think I looked it up at some point in the past.
I thought it was
Tabula,
Latvian because
yeah,
there's two words in Latvian. It's like
yeah.
table, like
Tabula rasa in epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge and psychology, is a supposed condition that empiricists have attributed to the human mind before ideas have been imprinted on it by the reaction of the senses to the external world of objects. Oh, well, in this case, I believe it was coined by the original John Locke, the philosopher, Locke named after. Latin apparently translation is scraped tablet or a clean slate. So that's kind of what this episode is about. It's Kate looking for her clean slate, which the island is here to provide. As the big centerpiece of this episode is, her backstory and relationship with the Marshal. Obviously, the reveal at the end of last episode being that she was the fugitive that the Marshal was escorting back to the States when the plane went down. So our opening scene is the pilot continuing to tell Jack that Kate's dangerous as he pulls the wanted picture out of his pockets. In the woods, the camp that just survived against the polar bear, everyone's arguing over who should stand watch, who should make camp, what noises in the jungle are, what the transition is. More just arguing. Sawyer, of course, wants to go back to camp and is causing problems for everyone once again. Saeed makes the executive decision, though, to tell everyone not to say what they heard over the radio because it could cause a panic.
just to mention, like, yeah, this is like a similar structure to what I was talking about last week. Like the 100, it's like, okay, you're gonna be the leader, you're gonna be the other leader, you're gonna do that, and they just so yeah.
It's so great, like since you've seen all of like the Lost knockoffs over the years,
Yeah, I've seen all the knockoffs,
and now you're seeing where it originated from. I love when this happens. This is always so entertaining to me. Back at the beach, Hurley finds the photo of Kate. Boone attempts to take the gun in the forest to make watch. Everyone kind of unanimously says that Kate should have the gun since nobody wants Sawyer to have it. There's still a little bit of awkwardness in the air over Saeed and where his former allegiances may have lied. And so naturally, everyone's like, yeah, given how easily we saw Kate dismantle that gun in the last episode, let's give her let's give her the watch. Then we get our first flashback. Kate wakes up in a barn with a gun in her face, talks with an old Australian farmer with a prosthetic arm. He offers her a place to stay and money if she helps out with the chores. Back on the island, the group makes it back to the camp. Saeed starts assigning everyone roles, water, electronics, stuff like that. Kate asks Jack how the Marshal is. Jack tells Hurley that the Marshal's dying and that they need more antibiotics, but they're running out of it because I believe that the antibiotics that Hurley found were only for foot fungus and some other, venereal disease that will not help the Marshal in his current state, as I believe
I'd mentioned that also Kate tells Jack about the signal. Just like,
yes.
But only him. Stay away from the group.
Only tells him. Yes. Once again, establishing that again. Jack is slightly more trustworthy, and even though he may be reluctant, he is kind of sliding into this leader role, if you will, that Saeed so far has filled the role for. What's it called? Jack goes into the plane in order to attempt to find more antibiotics because Hurley is squeamish, as we saw in the last episode. He does not do well with blood or violence. He runs into Sawyer, who's looting the plane. They have their first of many, many philosophical arguments, whereas Jack is all about, like continuing to pretend like they're in the modern world versus Sawyer is like, wake up. This is much more of a dangerous survivalist aspect role that we need to start to remind ourselves that we are in. what's it called? It's kind of interesting also seeing, you know, Jack's rivalries that are set up with certain other characters over the course of the show. You know, obviously a big one that's established once we get to season 2. The first episode of season 2 is called Man of Science, Man of Faith, because it's kind of contrasting Jack's more practical viewpoint with Locke's more religious, more metaphysical, more willing to explore beyond the purview of regular human rationality. And that kind of is the underlying conflict for the rest of the season. But I forget that in the first season, while Sawyer is kind of still in his antagonistic role for everybody else, how he has contrasts primarily with Jack. What's it called? Charlie goes to help Claire. They make some jokes about you know, who the father of Claire's baby is. Jin tells Sun that she's filthy while they're looking for a suitcase that she should
it's
wash
like
up.
you just crashed with a plane. Like, yes, you're gonna be filthy.
Oh no, but that's the thing. It's like Jin's whole viewpoint is it doesn't matter where they are. Like, you know, they still need to stay civilized in some way, shape, or form. You know, and I love this like kind of back and forth relationship where even though he's clearly being antagonistic towards Sun, he still is showing like little bits and pieces of that. Like he does desperately care for her, and he does like want, you know, the best for her. Honestly, he just doesn't realize how he's being antagonistic because in his mind, he's still like acting within the traditions of his culture, which again, just little micro moments like that are so crucial to just good character building and continuing to show just how diverse this show was in comparison to other shows that were on the air at the time. So Kate runs into Hurley, who's acting quite squirrely as he also saw the wanted poster. I
will say that Hurley is emerging as my favorite character. So
Hurley's a fan favorite character, to say the least, for some pretty obvious reasons. In the sense that he kind of fills out the role of like the casual everyday man. I can't wait till you see what his backstory was as far as why he was on the island and why he went to Australia in the first place. You know, like I said, there's so much unexplored ground that I'm so excited for you to see. As we go forward. What's it called? Kate goes to see the marshal. Next flashback, Kate, who is posing as Annie, is trying to leave in the middle of the night. She's trying to get her savings out of a jar that she stashed in the farmer's supplies cabinet. The farmer wakes up. He offers to bring her to the train station the next day. Back on the island, the marshal wakes up. He tries to strangle her. It's a classic move that, again, I feel like it's something that they borrowed from Trading Places. Again, Damon Lindelof is no stranger to, obviously, you know, pulling different pop culture references, but where that one, it's played for comedy purposes. This one, it's played for quite dramatic purposes as he immediately tries to strangle her. Jack stops him. The marshal goes into shock. Kate asks Jack if the marshal will suffer and if Jack can put him out of his misery. Jack says that he's not a murderer. The third flashback, Kate is being driven to the station when she sees a black SUV following them. She realizes that the old man sold her out and says he needs the reward money for the crazy mortgage that he's got. Back on the island, brief aside, Michael asks Walt what him and Locke talked about. Walt says that Locke told him that a miracle happened and that they're friends. Let's talk about this for a second, right? So this is the first instance, I believe, that Locke said that a miracle happened to him. We're going to see in the next episode, obviously, what Locke is talking about when he says that a miracle happened to him on the island. This will not be the first instance of potentially the island having supernatural abilities to heal, but it be directly tied into people's faith. This was part of the overall kind of back and forth, greater philosophical aspect that Lindelof, I would say, was trying to play around with this show, which was the idea of practical human rationale versus more greater philosophical need. There is this air of philosophy hanging over the whole show. You know, obviously John Locke is named after one of the most famous philosophers from the Great Enlightenment period in European history. There's a character later on called Benjamin Linus who we'll meet, who emerges as the leader of the others. He is also somebody who is established to be a pretty important philosophical figure as far as challenging Locke's viewpoint. What are your thoughts so far on the greater philosophical overtones that are being introduced here?
Yeah, we're very early into the introductory phase of these philosophical thoughts, but I think it's going to serve for a nice contrast. It reminds me of like maybe something like The Mist, where people are emerging like different viewpoints on what's happening to them, different ways they react. So I think that's going to be cool. But yeah, Locke is definitely the one I'm most interested in seeing where that goes. And you mentioned like what he does in future seasons. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yes, very Stephen King-esque, if you will, as well. That's the other thing that I was missing too with the pilot recap was the amount of the heavy influence of Stephen King over the kind of the subject matter in the presentation, because you're right, that is very The Mist, that is very Stephen King, as it is very, again, it's very, survival, post-apocalyptic-esque, where it's more so about like kind of, putting these characters in this like unimaginable scenario and then seeing kind of how the characters each individually react. That to me is always kind of a great source of interest in these types of shows. So obviously Locke being established as the more philosophical, the mystery, the backstory character. He right now he is serving to more so create conflict without necessarily realizing it before he becomes more of an active participant.
Also the way he like gets the dog back, just like, hey,
it's perfect.
I'm
it's
like,
perfect.
What's happening there?
Man of action, if you will. While all the other characters are kind of deliberating about, what they need to be doing, Locke is kind of just hanging out in the background, just doing his own thing. He's working on a whistle as Charlie runs into him, and then he later, you don't really know what he's doing, and then you see him use it. Then you see like kind of how that folds in. It's great stuff. Again, it's great. Just again, character building, establishing backstory, getting us to know these characters. Which again is something that's really missing from a lot of TV shows now. So while what's it called? So while Michael's trying to warm up to Walt, Walt says that Locke and him are friends. When Michael tries to say that they're friends too, Walt says that if he was, that he would find Vincent. So naturally, Michael goes into the jungle in order to try to impress his son to find Vincent. Hears noises, runs out, runs into his son, naked, rinsing herself off. That definitely will come back to bite him in the ass at any point in the future. Again, a little bit of an awkward scenario. And again, it may seem crass, because since we've seen so many scenes done like that in poor taste in recent things, but trust me, that does actually serve a good narrative and character fulfilling purpose.
I'm just waiting to see what is in the grass. Like,
yes.
Okay, how many more running away from moving grass can I take?
Just you wait. In 2004, when they didn't have a budget to do a whole lot of CGI creatures, they will do that as many times as they need to.
Did you send some of the crew members to run around in the grass?
Just imagine just like them talking to the crew members, just be like, all right, people, grass rustling time, let's go. Action.
Do we have any interns on the set?
That's exactly it. So Shannon tells Boone that she wishes that somebody would do something about the marshal who's screaming in pain. Once again, continuing to establish that she is the worst character in this entire cast. Saeed confronts Jack, asks what he's going to do about the marshal, and Jack's probably just thinking just like, God damn it, why won't this marshal just die already? Sawyer talks to Kate, says that she should put the marshal out of his misery, that it would be poetic since there's only one bullet left in the gun because he used all the rest of the bullets.
Sawyer was winning me over throughout the episode.
And then he does that. Like, not even just that, but how like the episode wraps up in terms of his actions that he takes. But the marshal asks Jack that he wants to speak to Kate alone. Then we get our last flashback, which is that Kate in the truck seizes control of the truck after she sees the marshal driving behind them. She runs the truck off the road with the old man in it. She saves him, but is caught by the marshal. On the island, the marshal tells Kate as he's dying that, if she had let him die, the old man, that she probably would have gotten away. But again, showing that Kate is not necessarily a bad person. She's just, on the run and doing what she can to survive. What caused her to go on the run initially? We shall find out at a later point. But the marshal asks Kate what the favor that she asked for before the initial crash happened, what that favor was. And she says that she wanted to make sure that the old man got his reward money. And I might need to check, but I believe that she said that the old man's name was Ray Mullen, which for a second I misheard as Raylan Givens, and I was like, what? I'm like, because I'm watching Justified right now as well, and Timothy Oliphant's character's name on that is Raylan Givens. So for a second I was like, huh? Did I hear that right? So
shared universe thing.
I was concerned, but then I was like, wait, no, that's separate studios because Justified was FX and Lost was ABC and Disney. So that was long before the merger, the Disney Fox merger happened. So the marshal tells her that he's gonna die. Hurley tells Jack that Kate has the gun. Jack runs towards the tent. One single gunshot rings out, but Kate's already outside the tent when this happened. And who walks out of the tent? Sawyer, because naturally he had to fulfill his role as not only the shittiest character, but the dumbest shittiest character. Because even though he tries to back up his argument saying the marshal asked him to do it, instead of hitting his heart, it turns out he hit his lung. So Jack is like, great, you idiot. Now he's going to bleed out slowly and suffer as if he wasn't already in enough pain to begin with. And Sawyer kind of just has that look on him as like, well, shit. That happened. And
that just happened.
It's like, that just happened. The episode wraps up with Locke summoning Vincent with the whistle that he's been working on. He tells Michael where he tied him up, saying that Michael should be the one to present Walt with Vincent, kind of as the hero in his eyes. And then Kate tries to tell Jack why the marshal had her, but Jack says that he does not care. as saying that this island can be like a start over point for them where they don't have to necessarily worry about their past. And then you have a brief, montage going over everybody doing their initial tasks. Walt running towards Vincent happily as Locke watches mysteriously from
some pleasant music, just
some pleasant music. Yeah, some part of the first of many of the iconic Michael Giacchino scores, which will not necessarily be used for happy purposes going forward. But right now, I would say that this episode was kind of like the de facto third part of the pilot, if you will, because there was a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily resolved, but some more stuff that was explained coming after this pilot. So with that being said, after you finish this episode, what did you think in terms of how this, not necessarily answered really any of the overhanging, lingering questions from the pilot, but kind of just continues to act as this kind of stationary piece as we continue to get to know these characters?
Yeah, it's just easing us into the season. Again, I have to bring up the contrast of the nowadays thing, where if you have one filler episode, that's like a sixth or an eighth of your season to tell the story. So back in the day, they can take the time, just spend an episode on a character, spend each episode on X number of characters, and you still have like 12 episodes to do the whole story. So I'm just ready to keep watching it week to week. I hope it doesn't get too hard to try and pace myself.
Yeah,
with some of the later episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because, like I said, the show is very much taking its time right now, being very deliberately paced, very, very chilled out. Like I said, easing us in, getting us to know these characters. But it's gonna be so interesting to me once we get into the later seasons when things really start to pick up, and we're gonna be at this point where we're like, remember when this was doing this, remember when, we were slowed down and taking our time. But again, this is what happened. This is what TV used to be. 6 seasons, a lot of episodes, a lot of taking our time with certain characters. Certain episodes weren't necessarily important for the plot, say, but again, there is definitely a nostalgia that comes from this era and this type of television producing and filmmaking that we simply don't have anymore, unfortunately. And it's kind of sad looking back, because I miss it. So next week's episode is entitled Walkabout. The focus character will be John Locke. We're finally going to start to get some backstory for him ultimately. So definitely something to look forward to there. Luke, what do you give this episode out of 5 stars?
5 stars. I'm going to give it a 3.5 because it's not. I'd say the first 2 were like 4.5 probably.
Yeah.
And this one is, it's just, not much happened, but that's okay. It doesn't need to.
Yes.
Just introducing Kate.
Exactly.
So we get Locke next week. So
yep, we get Locke next week, and then I believe we get another Jack episode after that, and then we get Jin and Sun in episodes 5 or 6. So it's gonna be an interesting one to say the least going forward. So with that being said, that is it. That is our recap of Lost episode 3, Tabula Rasa. Once again, thank you all to everybody who tuned in to this episode. Be sure to tune in and keep track over the coming weeks as we continue to pump out more episodes of this. For any of those who are watching us on the YouTube stream, stay tuned for the Beetlejuice review that I will be doing in just a bit. But Luke, in the meantime, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can follow me at Luke_reviews on Instagram. Sometimes I post on my story. Maybe it's something funny. Maybe it's something laughing at a studio that made a bad decision. More often than not. Or on YouTube. It's just some videos there. But the top 10 of the year, I think it's going to be a fun top 10 to make.
Let's hope, especially considering that, this has not been the best year.
It has not. Like, Alien Romulus came out. I'm like, okay, that's it.
Yes, that's literally it. It's like, what else do we have? Honestly, well, I mean, Speak No Evil. Speak No Evil comes out this coming weekend. So maybe that'll be good.
And The Substance.
Yes. Are you guys getting The Substance?
We are, but later in October.
Okay. Well, still, as soon as that movie comes out, watch that movie because, oh Lord, I'm going to say this right now. I got an early screening for that movie. That is the easiest 5 I've given any movie so far this year since Dune.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I doubt it beats Dune because it's me and
yes, Dune, no. Dune is still right now the triumph.
Can it beat out Twisters? That's mine.
It beat out Twisters for me pretty easily. But you and I have different thoughts on Twisters. I know you love Twisters. I know.
Do love Twisters.
Yes, you love Twisters. Oh man, you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. And like I said, be sure to tune in next week for episode 4, Walkabout. In the meantime, people, 12 seasons of a short film and get lost. podcast number 2 of Sunday morning. We got a big stacked panel for one of the biggest movies that's kicking off the fall season, which I don't think anybody was necessarily expecting, especially given that this is another legacy sequel for a movie that has come out almost 40 years ago now. We've never seen that go wrong in the past, but we're here to review Beetlejuice, Tim Burton's long-awaited sequel to the original Beetlejuice. And also his first movie in 5 years, which is insane. We're going to talk about that once the stream gets started. But I'm here with not only one, not two, but 3 people from my neighborhood playhouse days, which we just wrapped up a couple months ago. I didn't realize that Beetlejuice was this popular. I mean, I did, but not necessarily. So we are joined by Polly, who has been here before, and we are also joined by Cora and Rex. Guys, happy to have you all on. You guys excited to be here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you for having us, Dom, again.
Of course. You guys know that I will always make time for my Playhouse family. So, like I said, we're going to be getting into Beetlejuice. Don't say the name the third time. You guys all know the rules.
Not yet.
Not yet. Don't worry. We're going to utter his name so many times in this podcast, we're all probably going to get, possessed by him at some point, which, oh, man. All of that more on today's episode of the official Talkin' TV podcast. Stay tuned. All right, guys, we are here. We are here to talk about Beetlejuice. Yep, see, there, I already screwed it up. I said the name. What is that, 3-4 times? No, but there's got to be some sort of rule there where it's okay, so if you say it past 3 times, that it starts the reset process. Because remember the original, how you had to say his name 3 times.
It's spoken or broken.
Yeah, exactly. So already the rules I feel like are getting thrown out the window. So. Guys, so before we get into this, I want to get each of your thoughts on kind of your memories of watching Beetlejuice, the effect that it's had on you over the years. Because I'll admit, Beetlejuice, I kind of came late to a little bit. My kind of intro to Tim Burton was Willy Wonka, the Chocolate Factory movie that he made. Technically, that's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I watched when that movie came out. I was 8, I want to say, when that came out. And, a lot of the animated stop motion stuff that he'd been doing at that point, Nightmare Before Christmas, is a big influence as well. And then some of the later 2000s entries as well, once we get into the early 2010s, when he kind of starts to go off the rails with Alice in Wonderland and Dark Shadows. But we all know Tim Burton. He's known for a sense of macabre. He's known for a sense of, kind of mixing really crazy, outlandish stuff with some crazy stop-motion visuals. That's what he's known for. He obviously made his bones working as an animator for Disney, and then would go on to direct Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is kind of like an 80s cult classic. I actually have very fond memories of that movie. That's one of 3 movies that I watched with my grandparents a whole lot when I was a kid, for whatever reason. It's just the most bizarre 3 movies, but that's one that I have really, really fond memories for. So we're gonna go roundtable fashion. So Rex, starting with you, what is your first memory of watching Beetlejuice and kind of the effect that you would say it had on you growing up?
Sure. I don't know my first memory, but I grew up watching it in the 90s. It was on TV all the time, and I was obsessed with it. I mean, it really spoke to me as a little weirdo. I was into the occult and paranormal and really curious about ghosts and spirits. And I was obsessed with it. I watched it all the time. I also grew up with other Tim Burton movies. I loved Winona Ryder. Mermaids was a big thing for me too. A League of Their Own, Gina Davis. She was a huge one of my favorite actresses when I was a kid. I remember, I think in 8th grade or 9th grade, I dressed up as Lydia for Halloween and dyed my hair black temporarily. It was a kind of a month-long washout or whatever, and did the little pointy. It's one of my all-time favorites. I watch it pretty frequently, around Halloween with friends and stuff. Yeah,
it's a classic, to say the least, and I think that for me the most notable thing that stood out for it was the fact that I'm wow, this is treating death really casually and really funny, which might be part of the grander overarching vision as well. Polly, going on to you, your first memory of watching Beetlejuice and kind of the effect that it has had.
My first memory, I think my dad introduced me to Beetlejuice, and then I just liked it. I don't like scary movies and things like that. I get easily scared. But this one has like funny and it's like very Tim Burton-ish. So I don't know. I liked it and I can watch it over and over and I have watched it a lot. I also saw the musical. Like I really love Beetlejuice, like the character, you know? So I was really excited for this one.
Yeah, he's a fun character. He's a deviant. He's a debutante. He's one of those guys that says everything that we wish we could say. Yeah. You know, well, I would like to think that, you know, I've definitely probably incorporated some of his dialogue into my life, as I have a lot of other characters as well. What's it called? I really, again, the funniest thing that you bring up is the fact that, yes, while Tim Burton deals with scary subject matter, his movies aren't scary. And 9 times out of 10, they end up being comedies anyway. And I think that's kind of the selling material and why, especially, you see like a lot of kids really getting into his stuff. Like, again, I feel like a majority of us here were introduced to Tim Burton, you know, because of kids. You know, like that's the thing that people forget is he directed Batman, which at the time that came out was like the biggest thing. Like people, it was so big that they literally. Yeah, well, the fact that Batman was as big of a deal as it was should show, given that Warner Brothers was willing to lose $300 million on The Flash last year simply because they brought back Michael Keaton as Batman for that movie. So that kind of all goes back to Burton as far as his influence that he has had kind of over the years. And while he hasn't directed a lot of movies as, say, some of his other contemporaries, but all of his movies are pretty iconic and memorable in some way, shape, or form, as we'll probably go over his filmography later on in this episode. Even the bad ones, exactly. Are you kidding me? I remember all the Tim Burton bad ones. I'm pretty sure I've seen more of the bad ones than I have the good, honestly, while I was growing up. Cora, going over to you. Your first introduction and and memories that you have of watching the original Beetlejuice.
Well, I mean, I grew up watching Tim Burton. I was a huge fan because I really liked Johnny Depp in all the roles that he played. But I didn't watch Beetlejuice until I was about 12 because I was scared. Like Polly said, like it is kind of scary to think about like death and life at the same time. But then I've watched it many times over the years. My most recent time that I watched the original, I was on a plane this summer flying, and I get really scared of turbulence. So I was watching it while turbulence was happening, and I was like, is this the right movie to be watching with people like dead living in the present? And like it was a very interesting experience. But I love the movie because it's so timeless, and like the cast is incredible, and I love the different worlds that it creates, and every time it transports me. So I could watch it 100 more times.
I couldn't agree more, especially given that like it's ironic that you are watching that on a plane, considering both that in the original and in the sequel, which we're going to talk about eventually. In the original, literally the opening scene is the main characters who were introduced to dying in a car crash and not realizing that they're dead.
That's what you have an issue with is the plane crash in the.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that because Rex and I were actually talking about that in the movie.
I have a lot of thoughts about.
Oh,
I was like, oh, that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. I'm like, great. I'm like, yeah, so much for them keeping AI out of movies. That's all I'm gonna say there.
It's not even that, but okay, we'll get to it.
We'll get to that. But like I said, again, the movie, the original, immediately kind of showed you what it was capable of when it literally kills the main two characters off in the opening scene. And again, a scene that's both part comedic and part tragic, and then continues it when they walk into the house and don't even realize that they're dead. Like that's the other kind of underrated aspect is a lot of movies now in their ceaseless attempts in order to continue to pursue franchiseification are always attempting to like set up their own worlds and mythos. But this movie does a pretty damn good job of establishing kind of like the afterlife and like the overly bureaucratic nature of it. And again, just the insane kind of dedication to mise-en-scène and like really like creating like a wonky backwards world with like slanted doorways and very moody, colorful lighting and very creative looking makeup. I like how they make like all of the you know the dead souls in the afterlife kind of all like display like how they died. So you'll have people with like axes and chainsaws and you know all sorts of stuff that's like kind of inspired. I feel like a lot of modern macabre in you know, and it all kind of comes from this movie, which is still one of the most fascinating things when I rewatch clips of it. And obviously going into the sequel, I mean, I feel like there's been talks about doing a sequel for years, but it was one of those things where I'm like, Beetlejuice, I mean, it's not so precious, but it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily know if I want to see a sequel to this. The original is pretty perfect and it wraps itself up pretty well, you know, especially given that like the original movie kind of pulls a switcheroo in the sense of where you have your main characters that you think you're going to spend your time with, and then once they've kind of been literally transported into this other world, and you introduce Beetlejuice. The thing that people forget is that despite the fact that the movie is named after him, Beetlejuice is not the main character in any of these movies. He's a supporting character. But again, it's a classic thing that I've seen happen in a lot of other movies. He's so iconic, both because of the performance, because of the look, because of the mannerisms, because of everything that he does, the role that he serves in the movie, that again, it's kind of one of those things where the non-main characters become the most iconic part. And it's even funnier when you talk about Michael Keaton, considering the fact that this is really his star-making performance. I mean, yeah, he has Batman 1 year after this, but this is, again, like his star-making performance, his iconic performance, what he's kind of become known for. But before this, he was just kind of like a lesser-known comedian doing like, lesser-known comedies during the 80s. He was known for movies like Night Shift and Multiplicity and Mr. Mom. And he didn't really have like kind of this big kind of acclaim to fame. So this obviously showed a different side of him and like what he was capable of, utilizing his comedic talents to great effect. Rex, I mean, it's clear to say that he did not miss a beat. He did not miss a beat in the 40 years since this movie. And I mean, it's one of those things where you don't see this happen with actors a whole lot, but I feel like Michael Keaton's career throughout the last decade, I would say, has probably been like sort of his best, because just in the last decade, he's had The Other Guys. He's had the founder, playing the founder of McDonald's. He's had Birdman, which he almost won his Oscar for. He played the Vulture in a Marvel movie. Like he's the voice of Ken in Toy Story 3. Like he's low-key been killing it. So Rex, just what did you think of Michael Keaton and obviously his performance and how they brought him back and reincorporated him, and really just again showing how like that for me was the selling point, where I'm like, oh my God, Michael Keaton's back as Beetlejuice, and unlike when they tried to bring him back as Batman last year, like it definitely feels like he's kind of come home a little bit,
Yeah, I thought he was great. He looked amazing. Like he didn't change at all. And I mean,
that
obviously,
was crazy.
Like,
I'm sorry to
age a day,
but yes.
Oh yeah, like it, and yeah, he was hilarious. He was amazing. He stole the show, and every moment, I just feel like every moment was gold. And I rewatched the original last night because I was like, after I was just like, I'm in this world, I gotta go back. And yeah, and I was realizing, because I haven't watched it in a couple of years, and I was like, yeah, he really isn't in it that much, but like when he is, he's like,
oh man,
he's like totally on. And it must be so fun to play that character.
Oh my God.
Like even if the movie was trash, like the sequel or anything, I would come back for it. I would come back for that role anytime, because it's just like, also like the costume, the makeup, just, yeah. And I loved how they really tried to keep the aesthetic. They didn't update it, whatever. There were some things that were obviously like, updated for now, but like they were really like just trying to maintain the look, maintain the, dedication to like the 80s weirdo.
And they did that. And they did that. Well, especially given that, like, when you talk about certain things that they had to update for now, obviously they had a certain bit where they have an actor in the original, Jeffrey Jones, who they definitely could not bring back for this one for many, many obvious reasons. And I thought that how they brought him back, even if the one sequence that they used was so hilarious. And like, it's one of those instances where most of the time I don't like this in movies, but for this instance it worked, where this is definitely a movie where like they're like, okay, they had like 4 or 5 different plots that they all tried to stuff into this one movie, and it was so overstuffed that at points we were like, how are they gonna, and then they would just drop certain plot lines literally out of nowhere in quite hilarious fashions, and then they would like kind of just resolve certain ones quick. Like they did the best that they could. So I will definitely say that plot wise, the first one is a lot more streamlined and a lot more consistent with its storytelling, and this one it's more so just like, we're just gonna throw a bunch of shit at the wall, we're gonna see what sticks, and we're kind of just going to depend on the humor and hilarity that comes from this world. And I'd say for the most part, it kind of worked. There's obviously, again, certain instances where when you pull back, you're like, did that really need to be there? But I mean, Cora, we talked about this for a little bit. The plane crash sequence where they show you what happened with Jeffrey Jones' character.
No, so yeah. I mean, I loved all the different plot lines and the twists, and I thought they did it really creatively, and like it was stuff that I wasn't expecting to take the turn it did. But the plane crash, I don't know. It took me out of it for a moment, because they would have had to, I know they couldn't use Jeffrey Jones, but somehow they would have needed to just explain it without showing it.
Well,
And
it's ironic given that like they exposit away a lot of like the backstory of the characters who they kind of just kill off after 5 seconds, certain characters that they establish as going to be like really, really important, and then they're kind of just not. But I think that as far as the stop motion sequence, I think what was so uncanny about it is the fact that I'm like, oh my God, this was so clearly done by AI. This is looks like 15 other AI like renderings that I've seen online recently, and I'm like, especially given that they had like an untitled voiceover actor doing the voice of the Jeffrey Jones character, both in that sequence and obviously when they bring his character back. And again, what I think is probably the most creative instance that they have brought an undead character back. Like, I thought that was freaking hilarious.
Yeah, that was really smart with like the headless
Yeah.
character. I don't know. Still, the plane crash, but I think that's the only thing about the movie that really bothered me overall.
Yeah.
Not
even just him being headless. The fact that he was
Also,
literally missing like the top half of his body from like an obvious shark bite. I think you even saw like shark teeth sticking out of it.
How do you just use someone's image like that? Like, did he get paid? I mean,
I think it's one of those Hollywood under the table kind of deals where it's like, yeah, we need your character. You know what? Honestly, they probably didn't even reach out to or acknowledge him, and he probably, again, he is so far in actor jail. The fact that he, I'm pretty sure he did actually go to jail. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, Jeffrey Jones was found with child pornography on his computer. So yeah, needless to say, yeah, they're like, yeah,
also
nobody
like solicited a 14-year-old for
that too, yeah. Very, very unsavory stuff to say the least. I wish I could say it's uncharacteristic of actors in Hollywood, but unfortunately, it is not. So. Obviously, again, that's not the only plot line going. Again, do we even want to start to try and figure out like what the hell actually happens in this movie? Because again, there's so many different plot lines going. I guess we should probably say that the main plot line is that Lydia, Winona Ryder's character from the original, is still having nightmares about Beetlejuice as far as haunting her. She has this new reality show that she hosts where she basically like goes into different. It's basically like a shitty. I don't even know what you would call it, like one of those like paranormal shows. I don't remember what the most popular one was called, but where people go into houses and talk to ghosts and such. But so she has a talk show where. Oh yes, Kitty. Oh man.
Yeah, the rich Kitty came. He's like, I want to talk about Beetlejuice.
Yes. Indeed. All cats and animals are welcome here. So basically, after the taping of one of her shows where she's being haunted by Beetlejuice, she discovers her stepmother Delia, returning once again by Catherine O'Hara, who kind of low-key steals the movie, honestly, in a lot of instances. It's so good.
And also, did you notice like the homage they did to like Home Alone with her?
Oh yeah.
Yelling,
that was.
I thought that was so great.
That was great. That was hilarious. And also like
her iconic Kevin line, and then doing like it was just great.
Not even just that, but the way they kill her off is like the funniest death that I've seen in movies recently. And like it's played up for the joke. It's like, oh yeah, I got these asps, they're defanged. I'm like, I know exactly where this is gonna go.
Really, I did not expect that. I believed her.
It was done really well in that sense, but still,
I loved her performance art. I was like, yeah, I would, yeah.
It was one of those instances where again the movie very much knew who it was poking fun at, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of again the jokes and the gags, and it's very clear self-awareness that it's taking down of like again pretentious hoity-toity rich people. I thought was absolutely hilarious.
Catherine O'Hara apparently came up with a lot of the art that was her. Yeah, that was like,
that makes sense.
Art.
That
tracks. And then Tim Burton kind of came up with some other stuff, but she came up with most of the ideas.
That tracks. Yeah. Yep. So she hears that her father has been eaten by a shark, so they have to go back to Wind River for the funeral services, and they pick up her estranged daughter, portrayed by Jenna Ortega, who seems to be the heir apparent for the type of goth witchy roles, I guess, if you will, that kind of were I guess started by Winona Ryder with this role, and then kind of continued by Aubrey Plaza for a little bit. She made a very, very big stink about those types of performances in her iconic role on Parks and Rec. Then you've also got the Justin Theroux character, who is Lydia's producer, who wants to marry her. And then you have all the paranormal supernatural stuff once you get into the afterlife, where Beetlejuice is being chased by Monica Belluci, who is the one. Oh, well, that's not even just the tip of the iceberg. Who you got a very entertaining backstory about how Monica Belluci was the one who killed him, and then he killed her with an axe right before he died. And then you also have Willem Dafoe's character, who's a paranormal detective, who is really a B-movie actor playing a detective who's kind of trying to investigate everything. There's a lot of plot that's going on in this movie like a lot. Polly, I mean, was there any point where you were just sitting there and being like, why does there need to be this many plot lines in a Beetlejuice sequel?
No, actually, I saw it with Cora, and every like turn that the story had, I was like, whoa, where is it? What? Like when with the guy, I totally believe that he died from when he fell from the bicycle or something, and then
oh yeah, the kid, yeah.
So I think that they were like okay, they weren't like too much. It was like just like right on the line, you know. If there will be like more like eccentric or something else, it will be like, ugh, this is like what. But no, I was fine with them.
Yeah, and like I said, the world is so interesting, and like the gags, like, oh God, Rex. I mean,
I think the one thing is though, like Monica Bellucci kind of got done dirty. She was just like
100%.
wandering around being hot, and then like
it's literally sucking the soul out of people.
Hot, and we're I don't know.
With Danny DeVito as
that was that was like a one-off gag. That was a favorite of Tim Burton because Tim Burton like low-key like kind of helped him reinvent his career by casting him as the Penguin, and he's worked with Burton a whole lot. But that opening gag was great. No, but I do kind of agree, Rex, that like you have Monica Bellucci in the movie. She's kind of there to just be a one-off gag as far as Beetlejuice being like, oh man, I gotta get away from my crazy ex who's trying to kill me again. You know? Yeah. So I thought that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, I thought that bit was like I said, it's another one of those instances where it's there's a lot of jokes, there's a lot of gags, there's a lot of storylines, and so naturally you're not going to be able to like give all of them the full attention. But I thought that probably I think what particularly made it work was how they were just willing and confident to just take certain plot lines and just drop them completely. Like they set up like a pretty like crucial one with Jenna Ortega's character where she ends up being seduced by this one like kind of innocent kid who, Rex, you and I kind of guessed, are like, oh, like are his parents dead? But then it turned out he was dead. And then there's a reveal later on that like, oh, this kid like actually murdered his parents and is a psychopath and is now like trying to trick Jenna Ortega in order to like, again, like something that would like be a pretty important plot line, let's face it, in like any other movie. And then that plot line literally just gets dropped as a one-off joke, which
I don't think it was so much a joke. I thought it was really heartwarming and like ultimately that plot line because it was so well built up. And then obviously when he takes her life and then she ends up meeting her father, then it ends up with them having like a family reunion at the table. I thought that was like a nice touch to show like family is always family at the end of the day, but at the same time it was funny, so I really liked that plot line.
It was interesting because again, like in any other movie, like a plot line being dropped that quickly, we still had like 20 like 30 40 minutes left of the movie, I would be like okay. But like in the instance of how it was handled, you know, kind of again, how you're right, Cora. It was kind of like used as another way in order like for them to have that family reunion, help Jenna Ortega get that, that kind of clarity that she was missing, really. And also, again, just literally just dropping the shitty, manipulative boyfriend literally directly into hell. And also Michael Keaton's one-liner that he was like, I don't even remember what it was, but it was fucking hysterical. And then also, obviously, once Catherine O'Hara gets down into the underworld, and then obviously once they kind of wrap everything up, which is where basically Lydia enlists Beetlejuice once again in order to try and save her daughter's name, who I'm currently forgetting. That's Astrid is her name. That tracks. That's the name that she would have. Also, weird fact that the guy who plays the manipulative ghost boyfriend is Arthur Conti, who is Tom Conti's grandson. That was just a weird that was a weird little insert right there, little cameo. Also another just shout out. I wanted to give a shout out to Bern Gorman as well, who as the priest, who again, small role, but very, very memorable one as well. Yeah. Where he kind of like helps Justin Theroux's character out of it. What do we think about Justin Theroux? Because that was a role that, again, I love Justin Theroux. I'm watching him on The Leftovers right now. He's great. But I feel like if there was one instance where I'm like, man, he's trying, but I don't necessarily know if he's right for the part, it was him. And then kind of the reveal of him at the end is being like, oh, I only try to get with women for their money, you know? And I hit the lottery when Beetlejuice injects him with truth serum. I'm like, okay. It's kind of we're kind of more repeating the same thing, you know? We've seen this before.
He gets a pass because he wrote Tropic Thunder.
Jeremy, I knew you were fucking there. I knew you were there. I knew you were hiding there.
You also messed up. Multiplicity came out way after Beetlejuice.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was after. All right, so that was.
That's my
I
cameo.
knew you were there though.
That's my cameo for this episode.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
You're gonna come back, Mr. Never Coming Back.
I'm never coming back. What are you talking
about? Keep saying that. Keep saying that. You're only gonna come back like 4 or 5 more times before the end of the year.
I did my 2 episodes. I'm done.
2 episodes. You've done 4. That's actually 5. I'm pretty sure.
This doesn't count.
Oh, this doesn't count. Okay, just like Inside Out 2 didn't count.
Yeah.
Oh man. And the other instance too that I also forgot to talk about as well is the Dune inserts as well, where Rex, when you and I watched it yesterday, the bit where not only obviously the whole sandworm sequence from the original is clearly ripped from Dune, but also how when you had the sand sequences and the ground literally shaking and then just replicating stuff right from Dune in terms of how the sandworms came out, that killed me. I thought that was probably one of the best gags in the whole movie. Did you guys catch that reference?
Yeah. I appreciate that the animation wasn't like it matched the movie. It wasn't exactly out of the line like the airplane sequence. So that's why it was like okay with the Dune thingy.
Yeah.
And they could have used AI in all sorts of ways in that scene, but they didn't, and they stuck to the original mostly, and I really like that.
I really liked what they did with the sand, that like the shaking moment. That was really cool.
Yeah, the combination of practical and CG effects.
Yeah, I appreciate how much they kept to practical effects, because like the original, and rewatching it last night, like from like an actor's perspective too, it's like the costume design, the practical effects are so inventive, so fun, so wild, and like you lose so much of the fun of being in something when it's just like, well, I'm just standing in front of a green screen, I guess, you know?
Yeah. And that I think is the key word here is fun. The sense that like, again, it's a thing that I talked a lot about with Deadpool. And obviously, again, like Deadpool is more of like a much more mainstream instance. But I think that overall, when we talk about kind of what's missing from movies now, it's the fun aspect. It's what kind of Rex, you and I were talking about yesterday in the sense of where like, yeah, this wasn't the best movie. Yeah, the plot may not have been like the best, but it was fun and it actually gave its characters all something to do. Like every character in this movie had something to do. Like I would say that there wasn't a wasted moment, which it really does help to separate this movie leagues apart from a lot of its other, I would say a lot of its other contemporaries, because I feel like a lot of other sequels, like you guys were saying, are so emphasized on just, again, the action and the spectacle. But this one balanced it out with the characters, which, again, is the thing that every movie seems to be missing now. Character has to come first. And like you were saying, Cora, as well, as far as why the AI stop motion sequence is so jarring compared to, the other uses of stop motion in this movie, is because that's the only instance where it is very clear that I don't know how much actual input Burton had there. I don't know actually who's responsible for the creation of that. And it's so jarring compared to the rest of the animation in this movie, which is still really, really spot on. Like that was the thing that I love so much, is the practical effects, the set designs, just being completely wrapped up and transported into this world in a way that so few other movies really even seem to care about, honestly. It's the sign of like an actual somebody who has a vision, really.
Yeah, and I think it was Good Morning America. I watched the interview with the cast, and they were talking about how it's a handmade movie, and you really see that because of the set design, because like Catherine O'Hara had influence on what her character would be portraying, like what kind of art she would be portraying, and you see that in the performances, and you see that like on the entire environment. And yeah, I think it's pretty remarkable that they did that.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. What's called? So we're going to go around now. Favorite highlight / standout moment from the movie. I've got mine, but Cora, we're going to start with you. We're going to go the reverse round table. Favorite / standout moment from the movie.
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Yeah, there are.
I really like the wedding sequence. I just thought the build up and all the action that was going on, also the effects and them dancing around the cake. The commotion. That really stood out to me.
It's a good throwback, to say the least, to the obviously the iconic the iconic mambo dance at the table, which was hilarious, to say the least. Polly, iconic / favorite moment for you through the movie.
Same as Cora, I liked a lot of stuff, but I love when they are singing at the funeral, the Ayo, we said it with the harmonies and everything.
That was great. That was great.
Okay.
When they had the whole children's choir in the back, I was losing my shit at that.
I really like that, and like they made the song pretty. And I also loved the underworld when they're chasing. You know, like when they go through the doors, and then Beetlejuice says like, "I'm going to the bathroom," and you go this way, like that visuals and colors and things I loved it. I love it.
Yes. Oh my God! And Beetlejuice's army of shrunken heads. Oh, that was great.
I love Bobs.
Poor Bobs. Oh, and they even gave him a shout out, a rest in peace at the end after
I
Monica
know.
was sold out. Oh, that was so sad. Oh, talk about eliciting so much emotion with no words spoken. Oh, that was so sad. Rex, a favorite / standout moment for you?
I love the Soul Train.
I was wondering who was going to bring it up first.
How much disco they used in the soundtrack was amazing.
Yes.
Like I'm like Donna Summer is one of my favorite singers, and I've been listening to her a lot. And I was just listening to MacArthur Park, and then when that was like the crescendo, I was like, oh my God, it's MacArthur Park.
And I just love how in that sequence too, you also just have like obviously everybody dancing, but also the fact that like they don't like have any brief pauses, they don't like cut away. They just like there's certain sequences where they're just having people dance over and over again. They're just letting the gag play out. And most of the time, like I would be like, okay, I'm getting sick of this, wrap it up. But this one, I'm just like, no, just the joke itself was just so funny that I'm like, yeah, I'm just completely enraptured and into this. For me, I think it's two major sequences that like really just made me like almost like spit out my water. That's how hard I was laughing. Was when Beetlejuice drops the shitty boyfriend into hell, and he's like, and basically something along the lines of it's like, get fucked. Essentially, that was great. Oh, it was great. It's like shit out of luck. I thought I lost my shit at that. That was great. And it's literally like, well, that plot line's gone. And then obviously how it allowed for like them to kind of like have the nice little family reunion. And then the other sequence that I thought was also the Catherine O'Hara getting bitten by the asps was that killed me. I thought that was great. And like just the symmetry of the sequence I thought was really funny. And then also how Jenna Ortega within 5 seconds like immediately like burns up Beetlejuice's contract with the loophole, just being like, yeah, you she's like I gotta look at
I felt a bit bad for Beetlejuice in that moment.
I did, but at the same time, you gotta remember, it's like he again, like
he saved her life.
He did. But again, it's the ending where he's like he's gonna be haunting her for the rest of her life, which I thought was great. But also,
oh my gosh, the ending. Okay,
the ending we're gonna get to, but also the initial psychiatry sequence between those two and Justin Theroux. He's like, oh, I'm gonna spill my guts, and then they just like spill the guts everywhere. Again, just like visual gags that are just great.
The baby.
Oh my God.
Creepy. That was creepy.
What was even funnier, I think, was when they literally would like chuck the baby out the window. Like when he chucked it at them, that shit just killed me. Oh man. Yeah, and then obviously the ending sequence, which is like, it's building it up as this super nice, super happy sequence. And again, just me being me, I'm like, okay, this is gonna give way to like some horrific gag in the next minute, and then that's exactly what happened. Like as soon as we saw that like Jenna Ortega was about to give birth, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what this is gonna be. Yes, I'm like, oh, here comes the baby again, and it's gonna be like crawling all over the walls like Exorcist style and all that. And I love how it like ate the doctors too and all that. That was great. Oh,
but it
man.
did set a third one, so.
But as the end, that was as the movie ended, Cora and I would look at each other like, what just happened? Like, what was real? What's happening here?
Yeah, it was a class. Again, it's another instance where again that would have pissed me off in any other movie, because that's like a ending that they usually reserve for again comedies, but it works because this is a comedy where it's like the constant back and forth. It's like, oh, was this real? Oh, but maybe this is real. Oh, but maybe this is it. Yeah. But are these guys truly ever gone? You know, because we thought Beetlejuice was gone at the end of the last one, but he was just like, they just decided like some boring clerical job, you know? I love how they're kind of establishing Beetlejuice as like the new Freddy Krueger, whereas like, you may be able to vanquish him temporarily, but he can always come back, you know? I can just imagine that. That could go more in line with, maybe we can incorporate him somehow into our horror idea where we cast our former acting teacher John Terrell as a slasher killer, but he only says the lines that he said to us in acting class, which are all simultaneously would be horrifying as a serial killer, but also hilarious given that we know exactly what he is like as a real person. Rex, I think there was a point where you and I were literally sitting down and just riffing like various one-liners that John said like over and over and over again, and it was
I'm not sure
hysterical.
why that happened, but yeah.
I don't remember who came up with it originally, but someone was like, if we just like did a horror slasher, and I was like, what if? I'm like, what if we did that with John, but he's just using his lines that he did with us in acting school? I'm like, you wouldn't even have to have him act. That's the best part. You could just tell him that he's like, okay, camera's rolling, do your thing, and it would be hysterical. So, yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great. The dialogue, right? The jokes write themselves. Oh man. So, with all that being said, is there anything else that you guys really wanted to talk about before we give our final thoughts and star ratings?
Well, the only thing that I was disappointed, in the beginning they were like, "Oh, the Maitlands found a loophole," and we were like, "Oh, they'll get it, they'll explain it," and then they didn't.
And they never
and that's
did.
Fine. Yeah.
But I do agree that like dead people don't age.
Yeah.
So that was in the loophole. So then I kind of got that they didn't include it.
Okay.
Right.
That's you know what?
Yeah,
that's smart. That's a big brain thing right there. Yeah, because the Maitlands drowned, so obviously they didn't have like any visible like damage. Like if they had like a ton of crazy like burns and scars or anything on them, then obviously they could have. Yeah, but the fact that they have relatively no damage, and Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin obviously do not look the same now that they did back in 1988. Even though I was really sad because like you were saying, Rex, Gina Davis I was going back through Gina Davis's filmography.
She was the only person I missed. I didn't miss Alec Baldwin.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people miss Alec Baldwin for anything in general, but it's funny like how many of my favorite movies Gina Davis was in like from that time period. It's like, oh my god, like Beetlejuice, Thelma and Louise, League of Their Own. Yeah, exactly. A couple other ones that I'm forgetting. But like she has been sort of making a comeback. She was in the last season of Glow. She was just actually in Blink twice. So she's been in a couple of things recently, but again, she was like one of the feminist icons of the 90s. And she kind of just like went away, Long Kiss Goodnight is awesome.
They could have brought her back as somebody else.
Yeah, let's like a quick Blink or you'll
anyway, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So with that being said, like I said, it's a little bit of a shorter episode, but still a fun one to say the least. So going over your guys' final thoughts and star ratings. What are your guys' thoughts on Beetlejuice? We usually rate these out of 5. So Rex, starting with you. What are your final thoughts and star rating for Beetlejuice?
Final thoughts. I thought it was really fun. The writing obviously was not as good as the original. And I feel like, it was. But it was really fun, and I would see it again. Let's see, 3.5 stars.
3.5. Got it. All right, Polly, your final thoughts and star rating for Beetlejuice.
Yes, I also give it a 3.5. I enjoy it. It's watchable as well. I love that they respected like the world and that they keep it, even though they could have like added so much like like technology and blah blah blah, they stick to the style of the movie. So I think that I really appreciate that for the movie, and I love the title, and let's see if they do another one in like 20 years.
We'll see. Oh yeah, when Michael Keaton's 90. Yeah, we'll see how that works.
But 3.5 and a heart if you count the letterbox. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to, we've slowly started to incorporate Polly into the letterbox community. So I was about to say that the brainwashing still has to set in some more, but we are slowly transforming her into a cinephile over the course of as she continues to spend more time with us. Yes, yes, Jeremy,
Fucking me, get out of here.
Hey, I was there first. All right, I don't want to hear it.
Fair enough, you got me there.
Yeah, exactly. Cora, your final thoughts and star ratings on Beetlejuice.
My final thoughts. I give it a 4 out of 5. I definitely love the ambition behind it. I think it took risks that could have easily gone very wrong, but they didn't. And I loved, as Polly said, that they stuck to the originality of it. And there's certain loopholes that I would have questioned, and I do still question. I think the ending was also a bit like, I do really like the ending, and it hints at like another movie, but it was a bit like, I think it was a bit too much still.
It was rushed. It was rushed.
It was rushed. It was a lot at once, and then you see the sequence of them waking up in the bed, and like it was a lot to process. But yeah, no, I really loved it, and it
it's
was
good.
pleasantly surprising.
Yeah,
to say the least. Yeah, it was the definition of pleasant surprise. Jeremy, did you see it yet or not yet?
No, I haven't seen the first one since I was in high school, so I want to rewatch the first one.
Yeah, definitely rewatch the first one to say the least. I was gonna ask you if you wanted to chip in, but you haven't.
No,
seen it.
no, I would have been. You know me, I would have been like, yo,
I know. I know. Maybe I'll be able to get you a special cameo for Megalopolis when that comes out.
Man, I tried to buy tickets for that, sold out so fast. The only
sold out.
Only
That's
place
crazy.
is Jersey for one night. With Curdy, I was like, I'm not going there.
Hell no. Oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to go steal the film from Francis Ford Coppola's wine house. Wherever he's at.
Let me know how that goes.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
All
if
right,
I get arrested, you'll know what's up.
All right, yeah, I will. If I see your mugshot, I'll be like, well, he did tell us where he was gonna go. So my final thoughts. I gave it 4. You know, it's probably not a 4-star movie, but you know what? I had so much fun with it. I didn't care, honestly. I feel like for the most part, everybody understood the assignment, and the fact that like everybody here was saying the homage to the original, but also just blatantly like continue the world in the usage of practical effects is probably what still set it a little bit higher than say a lot of the other legacy sequels that we've gotten this summer, like Twisters, which just didn't need to be made in general. So there was that. So with that being said, I had a good time with Beetlejuice. I definitely recommend people go watch it. It's like a good like kind of like starting off the fall season the right way. Hopefully this will lead to some better movies than we've gotten really throughout the course of the year, because again, the fact that The Fall Guy is my number 2 movie of the year really should tell you just how awful this year has been for movies in general. But Rex, Polly, Cora, thank you for all coming on. If you have any social medias that you would like to plug as far as having people follow you, this is now the time to do it. Rex, starting with you. Do you have any place where you would like the watchers of this video to go and follow you on the interwebs?
Yeah, sure. I'm at Rexy, REXY, Lafemme, LAFEMME on Instagram. And thanks for having me, Dom. This was really fun.
Of course. Hopefully this will not be the last time that I have you on, because this was a ton of fun. Polly, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Yeah, same as my name here, at Polly Rivero with a little, ¿cómo se llama la cosa que va abajo?
Underscore.
I always mix them between dash, underscore, and
where's the underscore?
At the end of Rivero, like Polly Rivero underscore.
And Jeremy, you got anything you'd like to plug on social media?
No, I don't exist.
You're just a figment of all of our imaginations.
It's Beetlejuice, actually.
Oh my God! I told you he was gonna show up.
Yeah, basically.
I told you it was going to show up eventually. Cora, do you have any social medias that you would like to plug?
I'm a pretty private person when it comes to social media, but my Instagram is c.ora.r. So, because my last name's hard to pronounce and write. So, but yeah, no, thanks for having me, Dom. I've been waiting for this day.
Yes.
So.
And it finally came. It finally happened. Yes.
It finally happened.
You're welcome, Cora.
I'm worthy of being on this podcast.
It's like took long enough, but we finally got there. That's all that matters. You guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. This episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts tomorrow, along with my most recent recap of Lost, which I just did with Luke. That will also be available tomorrow. And as always, people, from everybody here in the panel, both the seen and the unseen ones, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. As far as this podcast, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks for Megalopolis.